How's it going, YouTube? Today we're going to be delving even deeper into the new TGS Final Fantasy VII Remake trailer, and we're going to be looking at your comments, just as we did with the E3 video. We're going to be looking at what you guys think of the Final Fantasy VII Remake trailer and just the remake in general. Before we get to your comments, though, I wanted to expand a little bit more about what I thought of the trailer. Yesterday, I made a quick video, but that was in the middle of a Twitch stream, and I only got a chance to watch the trailer once on my little phone. So now I've actually seen the whole trailer multiple times, and I have let it sink in a little bit more, and I have to tell you, this trailer is amazing. Bar none, this is the best trailer they've made for the game for a multitude of reasons. For the longest time, Square has been stringing us along with trailers that show a little bit more each time, but don't really get into the meat of what Midgar is going to be and what the remake is going to be about. In this trailer, they showed so many different things and such a variety of things that it really changed the game. There is one thing in particular that I want to focus on, though. A lot of people are saying that this is the trailer that sold them on the remake, and I think I understand why. The other trailers were good, but something always felt missing from them. Sure, it had the dialogue and the characters, and the story was mostly there, and the music sounded great, but something was missing. Something didn't feel Final Fantasy VII yet. It felt more like a game about Final Fantasy VII than a true remake of the original game. But this trailer captured what makes Final Fantasy VII so great. That gimmicky, dark humor. The characters playing off of each other. The larger-than-life scenery. It stopped feeling like they were trying to make a 2019 version of Final Fantasy VII, and more like they were trying to bring back the 1997 Final Fantasy VII. When I think of Final Fantasy VII, I think of two things in particular. All of the super somber and dark scenes, like with Barrett, and the themes of loss and tragedy, put up against themes of humor and finding light inside the darkness. I feel like this trailer finally encapsulated the humor that should be in Final Fantasy VII, but I'm still looking forward to seeing a lot of those dark themes and some of those scenes that really made an effect on me as a kid. Still, I understand they can't show everything in the trailer, and I'd rather them not show everything in the trailer, so I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing those scenes in the final game. There's a few other things I did not mention in my previous video, but seeing as though I'm sure you guys are going to comment about it, we'll just read through the comments and talk about them as we get to them. Our first comment is from Aaron Demand. He said, what about the most important thing they showed? Friggin' frog status is back. Oh yeah, we got the frogs back, guys. Everyone's been talking about this frog. It's pretty awesome, and again, I stress that they're actually bringing the humor of the game back, but not just the original humor. They're adding their own humor too, which is fantastic. You know, they brought back the funniness and quirkiness of Wall Market, but then they also have, like, the frog with the Buster Sword. So they're putting in their own humor. They definitely understand that the game is supposed to be funny. And that's really important, because with a game so somber and so dark as Final Fantasy VII, that reverse theme of humor is, like, the most important thing to get right. DE528WZ said, I'm surprised he didn't mention the new soldier character. New soldier character? Oh, you mean this guy? I think you guys are underestimating my Final Fantasy VII knowledge. I mean, I got the 10th anniversary Ultimania guide, the Omega guide, the Ultimania archive. I got, look at all these books. Look at all this. You're telling me that soldier character isn't in any of these? Let's see here. Let me just look down here by soldier. We got Fort Condor. That's got some grunts. Alright, it's a new character. So I'm not gonna lie, the first time I saw the new character, I thought maybe it was just a character I forgot about from, like, Crisis Core or something, so I didn't want to say anything about it in the first video in case I was just forgetting. But then I went back and I realized, yes, this is a brand new character that they're bringing to the remake. Now, at first, my reaction was like, Square, what are you doing? You have all these great characters that you could be expanding on, and instead you bring a new character in. That seems like the worst idea ever. But now that I've had time to think about it, I really do like this idea. I don't feel like the other characters are suffering from this. They've definitely shown that they're expanding more on the Avalanche characters, and they'll have plenty of time to expand on the main character, seeing as though this is going to be a multiple game series. And they need to find a way to expand on the world of Midgar, because they gotta make a whole game out of just Midgar, so they're wanting to add some new spiciness to the formula, which having a new soldier character is a great way to do that. He looks really interesting. I'm excited to learn more about him. Soldier's always been a really interesting thing, and honestly, the original Final Fantasy VII does not go very far into Soldier. More Crisis Core talks all about Soldier, but the original Final Fantasy VII just kind of glosses over it, so it'll be great to get a little more of an in-depth look at soldiers. Stemic 1000 said, about President Shinra on the bridge, he's not going to put himself in harm's way, hence the hologram. I thought the president being there in the original was a bit weird because Barrett could just shoot him dead. I trust in what they're doing. Bring it on. Yeah, I mean, I agree with this. I do agree that the hologram's cool and it makes more sense thematically. But I just always felt like giving the president this hubris to show up where he knows Avalanche is attacking and talk to them face to face before sticking his goon on him. I always just thought that gave him like a really cool personality. It doesn't much matter because he dies right after that. But it kind of gives you a good sense of what Shinra is like. Before you even get to go to the headquarters, you get to see this, what the president is like. He's got this huge ego. And that gives you a taste of like, wow, Shinra really is just this ridiculous company. And then when the president dies and Rufus takes over and Barrett says that's the president's son, you already get an idea of what Rufus is going to be like. He's probably going to have a huge ego just like his father. So we kind of lose that in a way, but it looks like the hologram itself has this huge ego as well. He's bragging about it. So I think they preserved that fine. Atlink said, to me, this seems like a remake that was supposed to be more in line with the original vision they had for the game, but were constrained in the PS1 days. That, and they added in fun, cool-looking stuff as well. I'm genuinely looking forward to playing one of my favorite JRPGs in a new style with new elements. Just slapping a new coat of paint on the exact same story would have been kind of boring, and it would have made everything less impactful. Think about it. If we had the same exact game, 1-to-1, then where would the fun be in the story? If you knew everything that was going to happen? I'm happy they're tweaking it. I think this is a good mindset to have. Back when I made my original video, the first comment video I made, I kind of gave off this impression that because they're changing stuff, it ruins everything else about the series. I didn't mean for it to come off that way. What I meant was, when we play the new game, we have to throw away everything else because this is a new version. So, like, I can't open up the archive and say, like, oh, Sephiroth did this exact thing at this exact time, because this is a brand new timeline. This is a brand new, way of looking at Final Fantasy VII. So, I didn't mean throw it away as in we can never read it again. I just meant as we're playing the remake, we cannot look at the old stuff. We can only look at the new stuff. And if you separate them in that way, if you separate it old Final Fantasy VII, which is Final Fantasy VII, Advent Children, Crisis Core, On the Way to a Smile, all that, and then separate that from new Final Fantasy VII, which will be Remake Part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then I think we can all agree that that's a great, it's great that they're changing things, because if it were separated completely, yet they tried to copy everything, that would be silly. If you're going to already separate it from everything else, you might as well change stuff up. You might as well throw in some spice so it's more interesting for those of us that have already read the archive a million times to see some new action, see some new stuff happen. Sure, the general themes should still be there, because that's what makes Final Fantasy VII Final Fantasy VII. But changing little scenes here and there and having different things happen, that's all good. Willy-Nilly271 said, the picture you're looking at 556 is when the plate sector was destroyed. Yes, now that I can actually see the picture on a full screen and not on my phone, I can definitely see that this is them looking at the sector when it was destroyed. I still wonder when this event is happening. It hopefully is not right after the plate is destroyed. I still want to see that Barrett scene at the playground. That is like one of the most memorable scenes of the entire game for me. And I would love to see that scene done, maybe even verbatim, like the same text and everything. Like, I want to see that scene reimagined because I love that scene so much. So I'm hoping that this isn't right when the plate is destroyed, but rather after Barret, Tifa, and Cloud go to Wall Market and climb up the crazy broken wall and end up at the Shinra HQ, and then maybe before they walk in the HQ, they turn around and see the broken sector and realize like what this fight is for, and have like a beautiful moment there. That would be really cool. And again, something they could add to the story that really doesn't hinder anything, but just gives you more of an incentive to like, all right, we're gonna go beat up Shinra now. Nubis said, do you think that it would be okay for us to have more backstory on the characters during the game, or do you feel that new backstory would ruin the game for some people? Like I said, it depends. As long as you're splitting the old stuff from the new stuff, I think it's okay to do backstory. And honestly, the old stuff doesn't have a ton of backstory for the characters. If you watch my in-depth look series, you'll realize that a lot of the characters just have like a hometown and maybe like one event that happened to them, and then Final Fantasy VII starts. So it would be cool to see a little bit more about their history. I could imagine maybe Tifa learning martial arts, having more with her there. I could imagine Cloud going through soldier training. I could imagine Barret living with his wife, getting to meet Barret's wife. There's so many things that are hinted at, but we never really get to see. And seeing as though this is a game that's entirely Midgar and they need to fill in some space, it would be cool to have a little bit of backstory on each character. I feel like that's probably not going to happen. I feel like they're going to focus more on Midgar. Maybe at the beginning of the next game, when they go to Calm and they talk about Cloud's story, maybe they could also talk about everyone else's stories. I don't know, something like that. But I don't know if they're going to waste any time with this game. This game feels a lot more action-packed, and it seemed to be paced really fast. So I don't know if they're going to take the time to go back and talk history. But who knows? We'll see. Snurminer said, what do you think that parachuting scene is with Biggs and Jesse? Maybe it's after bombing mission in the beginning. Yes, I do think that this is right after the first bombing mission, for a couple of reasons. For one, they're floating into the slums, so that makes sense. But then also, they say Cloud is a keeper in the trailer, so that must mean that they just did their first mission, and then Cloud did really well, and then they were like, he's a keeper for the group. So yeah, I'm guessing first reactor mission happens, and then you parachute into the slums, and then at some point the story picks up with the Seventh Heaven. James Rogers said, yo man, I'm ready to lay down some rubber and crank that throttle, if you know what I mean. My question is, how far do you think they'll go with the Sephiroth flashback? They showed a character model, and obviously they would have to introduce him as the villain or someone important before the end of part 1. But in the original game, the first time you even hear his name is when Shinra fails to remember Cloud, unlike the great Sephiroth. So in your opinion, how do you think they'll address this? How would you address it if you were remaking the game? So, I've had kind of a theory about Sephiroth since the first trailer. I believe they did remove the whole, like, seeing Sephiroth for the first time in Calm and then seeing him in the game, not in flashback form on the Shinra cargo ship. I think that they want to show him in Midgar, and that makes sense. If you're going to make part 1 only Midgar, you got to show Sephiroth at some point. That's what everyone wants to see. So they're going with like this Sephiroth flashback thing where Sephiroth has way more control over Cloud than he normally does. The way that the story works in the original game is that Sephiroth doesn't really have any control over Cloud at first. Cloud is just simply Mako poisoned and doesn't really know who he is, and is having this struggle between him and Zack in his brain. And then when Jenova breaks out, that's when Sephiroth starts to control all of the Jenova clones. So not just Jenova, but anyone that has Jenova cells inside them, that's when he starts to control them. So that's when Cloud starts to get controlled by Sephiroth, is when Jenova breaks out and turns into the Sephiroth we know that kills the President. So to have Sephiroth be controlling Cloud before Jenova breaks out is a little strange. I don't know if they'll discuss that at all, but technically that's a little weird. I don't want to get super into it now. There might be a video about it soon. But basically, Sephiroth doesn't control any of the clones at first, and then during the Shinra raid, that's when he controls Jenova. Jenova breaks out Cloud, and that's why they get broken out of the cell, because Jenova wants Cloud to be able to break out, escape Midgar, and eventually meet up at the Northern Crater. So there's a whole like backstory with that. It would be strange for Sephiroth to take control of Cloud and start giving him glimpses of Sephiroth before Jenova even escapes. It's not impossible, it's just kind of weird. But I'm glad they're showing Sephiroth more. Of course, I love Sephiroth just as everyone else, so I think having Sephiroth be a character that continues to show his face throughout the entire game is good. How are they going to end the game? Is it going to be Sephiroth as a final boss? Is it going to be Rufus as a final boss? Is Motorball going to be the final boss? Hopefully not. We've talked about this a lot on stream, and I think what might happen is I think we're going to escape Midgar with some kind of crazy Rufus fight, and then when you defeat Rufus and defeat Motorball, if there is a Motorball, and then you're finally leaving Midgar, I think Cloud will have like a final confrontation with Sephiroth before they leave. It definitely feels like they're building up Sephiroth as the final boss. They haven't even said anything about Rufus yet, so I don't think Rufus is going to be the final boss. You don't even really get to know Rufus until the game would be almost over. So I think they're going to build up Sephiroth, build up Sephiroth, build up Sephiroth. Then there's going to be the big Shinra HQ raid. You're going to fight a bunch of bosses there, escape, and then Sephiroth's going to be the final boss. But it really remains to be seen. We don't know. If I were remaking the game, I think what I would do is I would leave Sephiroth out of the picture at first, and then once you got to the Shinra HQ, you'd start to learn a little bit more about Sephiroth, since he's, you know, the greatest soldier of all time. Some of the other characters might start reading about him before Cloud even remembers anything about him, and then he could be revealed throughout the Shinra HQ raid, and then could be a final boss. It's not unheard of to have the final boss not be something that's talked about the entire game. You could maybe hint at him, but you don't necessarily have to show him until near the end of the game. I usually prefer when a final boss is with you throughout the game. I think it just makes the final boss battle more epic. But in this scenario, it just doesn't make as much sense for the story. So I think it would be okay if they just talked about how amazing Soldier was throughout the entire game, and then as soon as you get the Shinra HQ, you start learning about Sephiroth, and then suddenly, boom, there he is. Big Boot Bob said Odin was in the trailer for a split second too. I had a lot of people talking about Odin and whether or not he was in the trailer or not. I went back and looked at it, and unfortunately that's not Odin. It's actually a rare enemy that shows up in the train graveyard. He looks like this, and this is what he looks like in the trailer. This does bring up some interesting topics though. For one, they are focusing on all of the original enemies, even rare ones that some people don't even know exist, so that's really cool. And this also brings back the topic of summons. So Ifrit and Shiva are definitely in the game, as well as all the pre-order bonus summons. We talked about earlier how many summons are going to be in this game and how exactly are they going to use them in the future. I still don't know, and I'm still very, very curious. Out of everything this trailer and everything all the trailers have shown, my one big question is, what is part 2 going to be like? And like I said before, I'm pretty sure Square also doesn't know. They've said on a couple occasions that they're not sure how they're going to tackle the second part yet. If they're giving us Shiva and Ifrit now, as well as a bunch of other summons, I would have to expect that they would let us keep them when we get to part 2. Otherwise, we'd be missing out on like 2 big elemental summons. But then again, maybe their idea is not to give us too many strong summons yet, because they're going to wipe our inventory and we're going to start clean in part 2. There's really no way to tell, and I'm still really wondering how it's all going to work out. But at least it looks like they have some kind of plan now. Before, with the other trailers, they barely showed anything, and it always gave me the impression that they just don't know what they're going to do yet, so they don't want to show anything that they're going to change their minds on. But now they're really starting to show a lot. They're showing summons, they're showing attacks, they're showing mini games, and so they really have a better, clear idea of what they want to do. We just don't know what that idea is yet. Also, another thing I wanted to point out with the train graveyard, I said before that the scene with Cloud, Tifa, and Aerith... Oh, shoot, I have to say Aerith now, don't I? The scene with Cloud, Tifa, and Aerith I said it might be in the train graveyard, and it is in fact in the train graveyard. I went back and looked at it, and you can clearly see a train in the background. So that makes sense. That's right when they come out of the sewer. All three of them are together, heading towards the battle at the plate. So it would make sense that they would all be together in the graveyard. Alpaca Fantasy said, I think this trailer shows a decent change of the original's tone. The characters and the voice acting turning me really off a bit. I don't know if I'm gonna like this kind of cheesy stuff. Sure, the original had funny and weird stuff in it, but the tone in general was really serious, and I liked that. Now it seems like bad written teenage stuff to me. I do kind of agree, especially with the first trailers. I felt like some of the text, or some of the dialogue rather, felt kind of goofy when it didn't need to be goofy. The original is pretty serious most of the way through, except for the very small parts where they're joking around. But I don't think changing that ruins the game. I think that if you have the cheesy dialogue where the characters are, playing off of each other for the majority of the game, and then you have these serious moments where they're serious, I think that works maybe even better for a voice-acted game. If they're serious 100% of the time, it's hard to start even taking them seriously when they are serious, So, I don't know. I think it's an okay change. I do hope it's maybe a little less cheese than what we've been seeing. But, I don't know. It does give this goofy tone, which I do love from the original game. Maybe a little bit more than the original, but I'm okay with that. King Beef said, am I the only one who thinks this looks terrible? It's the modern standard of all style and no substance. Voice acting that belongs in a straight-to-TV 80s action movie, really bad one-liners, trampling all over important parts of the original story. You're not the only one that thinks it looks terrible. I read several comments of people that were very upset with this trailer, and I think over the last couple months, the biggest news that has come out that has sent the most people out the door has been the news that the first game is going to be just Midgar. And I struggled with that news at first too, but I feel like making the first game Midgar really does give them the opportunity to expand on a lot of the stuff that the original development team probably wanted to expand on and just couldn't. If I could go back in time to talk to them back when they were making the game, I think that they would probably say, we would love to do more in Midgar. But see, back then, it was the PS1 era. They could only do so much. They also were making the game back at a time when the series didn't have sequels. So they had to make it all fit on one disc, they thought, until they realized, let's do 3 discs. So, I mean, it was obvious that they wanted to make it a big game, but they could only go so far. I think that if given the chance, they would expand Midgar and expand some of the characters. I definitely think they wanted to do more with Avalanche, and they just didn't have the time. In fact, there even is a cut section, a lot of cut sections with Avalanche, particularly one in Barrett's hideout, where Barrett tells them that after their mission is done, they're going to all go to Cosmo Canyon, where Avalanche was formed. He's going to show them Cosmo Canyon and show them the history of Avalanche, and that got cut. So there's definitely actual proof in the code that they wanted to do more with Avalanche and couldn't. So I don't think we should look at this as they're adding unnecessary stuff, but rather they're adding stuff that should have been there in the first place. But that's only parts of it. There are certainly stuff that they're going to add that doesn't belong there. Pre-ordering summons definitely is something that I don't think falls in line with the original idea of Final Fantasy VII, but it's the modern times. They got to do what they got to do. And although I disagree with it, I know not everyone does. And at the end of the day, we need a fun game. At the end of the day, we need a game that feels like Final Fantasy VII. If they can do that, then they can add whatever the heck they want, in my opinion. Alrighty, that'll be it for this one. Thanks to everybody who left comments. I appreciate it so much. Thank you for keeping the conversation alive as we get ever closer to the Final Fantasy VII Remake release date. I also wanted to mention that I've been getting a lot of questions about the Final Fantasy VIII Remaster. I'm actually doing a full Let's Play of the remaster on the channel. You can check that out on my playlist page or at 48productions.com. If you have any questions about what I think about the Final Fantasy VIII Remaster, just go ahead and watch the Let's Play. I'm playing through the entire game and giving all my opinions on it as I go through. So be sure to check that out. And thanks again for all your support. I love you, and we will catch you later. The other trick... I'm dead.